given where we are, given what's happening, and maybe you've already said this, you've already answered this somehow, but given where we are from the perspective of the deep psychedelic work that you've done, what does it mean to be a good person right now? What does it mean to be, what does it take? Yeah.
Man, that's a large question. I think of a half dozen ways to answer that question pop into my mind, and all of them are wrong. So I'm kind of sifting through layers. In some of my deepest experiences, there are moments, there are times when, and even after a session, but under the influence of the learning of a session, when something just falls away, something opens, and I experience the world truly as living and breathing as one. I feel like my feet are rooted in the earth the way a tree is rooted in the earth. I look down at the grass and I feel complete continuity of being between everything around me and my own being. I feel us breathing the same air. I feel us all different species sharing the same moment in time. I feel the pulse of the universe in its utter simplicity, not paying attention to any of our divisions of species or moods or incarnations or anything like that. The entire universe just being itself. And I am part of that in grateful. It's not even communion, because communion implies a subtle duality. And this is when all of that falls away and a great transparency of being opens. From within that position, I experience an opening of my mind, kind of a delicious sense of presence that gives me an intimacy with grass. And then at a deeper level, I experience an opening of my heart in which the idea of harming anyone is the farthest thing from my mind, and the idea of helping everyone is the most natural thing in the world. It's not being good. It's being alive within this reality of oneness. So to me, goodness is simply an approximation, or it's a compass needle that points in the direction of this fundamental truth of oneness. And the truth of oneness is all these derivatives that flow from it, circumstances. But at essence, it's very, very simple. And I think compassion, goodness in that way, fairness, justice, are all aspects of oneness. They're all kind of fractal manifestations of oneness. So what does it take to be a good person today? I think it takes a willingness, a commitment to serving a collective good, to serving a good that's not private, that opens up to future generations, that opens up to people who are unlike me and species who are unlike me. Just an honest confrontation with what is in order to bring about a better life for other beings. I know this is very simple, but to me, goodness is simple. It is that simple. It gets complicated in the enacting of it, but at its core, it's an action that comes out of oneness. And if it's not coming out of a deep grounding in oneness, then maybe there's something not to trust in it. Because deep goodness comes out of oneness, I think. Now, I don't know if this really addresses the depth out of which your question is coming, because I understand the true angst, not angst, but the true kind of quandary from which that question comes. But the deepest answer I have in response to it, I'm afraid, is just a mystical experience of oneness, in which that context, goodness just becomes an insignificant component, a spontaneous component. Just like the way you react when you see something beautiful. It's an arising that comes up inside of you. Goodness is simply an arising that comes up inside of you when you are in the condition of oneness.
I have a maybe a more sort of serious response, and I have a more joking response. And the more serious response is something along the lines of like what does it look like to what does the dance look like? You said it becomes difficult in the enactment. What does the dance look like between having that experience? Because I've had that experience, and I can tell you fully, 100% honestly, that anywhere from 10% of the time to 99% of the time, I'm not there at all. There's no sense of it whatsoever in my experience, and I'm not in the ground of that as I'm showing up in the world. And I'm wondering, in the same way that also the playful response was, so we should all take 500 mics of LSD, right? But
no.
What does it look like to have had that experience? Because the way that you speak about it, and I think naturally it makes sense, like when you're there, goodness just flows from you, right? It is the most organic and natural expression of being in the world, is when you're coming from that place. And yet having a deep and profound experience doesn't make you a deep and profound person. Experiencing oneness doesn't mean that you now walk through the world inspired and infused in all your actions. Oneness just streams from your fingertips, and every interaction is a blessing with the world from the depth of the oneness that I have embodied simply by taking enough mushrooms to touch it once. So what does it look like then? I mean, maybe this is a question around integration. What does it mean to remember that? And what does it mean to catch ourselves in forgetting?
That is, we go up on the mountain, we see some things, we may be given some blessings, and then we come down, and then we have to go to work on Monday morning. And that's over and over again. It means a matter of constantly engaging, being aware of how you're engaging, checking yourself, recommitting yourself to doing a better job over and over and over again. For me, much of it was in my work as a teacher, constantly always enjoying it, always loving to be with the students, always wanting to do it better, but constantly catching myself making assumptions, making false inferences, not doing a good enough job, being a little tired, letting my students down on a particular day, coming back and trying to do better, coming to do better the next day, do better the next week, better the next semester, over and over again, trying to live up to the things that we know to be true. Integration is a strange term. I'm not sure. I'm glad that the psychedelic community is paying more attention to integration because it's really, really critical. And there are dimensions and aspects of integration, and the word integrate carries us a certain distance and doesn't carry us so far, but it's hard to live our visions. It's hard to live the truth of what we've seen because it commits you to constantly being aware, if you take the time to pay attention to yourself, how bad a job we're doing at living those truths. But that's the nature of the beast, though. It's constantly, I mean, if we live around people who are really good people, who really have a deeper natural instinct for goodness and kindness and generosity than we have, then it makes it easier to sort of face our own shortcomings, because we have someone that we can look at and say, that person's doing this better than I do. So this gives me a measuring stick. I can do better. I'll do it better tomorrow. I'll keep working on it. And that's why, in the Buddhist tradition, spiritual friends, people who are also have committed themselves to awakening, that's really one of the great Sangha community is one of the great pillars of progress. So, yeah, you're right. It's wonderful to have the experience, but we don't walk around in that state, but we practice and practice and practice. And then maybe 10 years later, we were in it a little bit more. 10 years later, maybe we're in it a little bit more, but practice and practice and practice. And if we ever think that we're really there, then all we have to do is ask our young children, and they'll remind us that we're not really there as far along as we think we are. Our kids will set us straight.
Sure, or perhaps we could. I think it was Baba Ram Dass said, "If you ever think you're spiritually awakened, go spend a week at your parents," or something like that. So maybe it's the other way around.
Yes.